Touchdown confirmed. We are safe on Mars. The control room at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory late in the evening of August 5, Pacific Time, when word arrived that the Curiosity rover had landed safely on Mars. The 1-ton rover, which dwarfs all Mars landers that came before it, will now spend a planned 2 years exploring the Martian surface. The mission is expected to cost $5 billion. Curiosity's task is to investigate the inside of Gale crater, where a giant mound of sedimentary deposits may provide evidence of a wetter, possibly habitable Mars billions of years ago. But first it had to survive an elaborate landing sequence which appears to have gone smoothly. Curiosity landed on time and on target and soon beamed back grainy photos of its wheels and its shadow. Given the car-like size of the rover and the challenges of landing on Mars, Curiosity's landing goes down as one of the greatest parking jobs in history. Millions of roses get handed out on Valentine's Day. But growing roses has an environmental impact worse than many other crops. Start with climate change. Most roses in the US and Europe are imported from warmer climes. All that flying and trucking adds thousands of metric tons of carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. Then there's all the water needed to, well, water the flowers. And the runoff fouled by copious quantities of pesticides needed to make the roses look perfect. There's also the wildlife and workers poisoned by all that fumigation. Add to that habitat destruction where floral plantations displace native forest and wetlands. Finally, there's the refrigeration needed to keep those blooms fresh. The electricity is often produced by burning fossil fuels, and the refrigerant gases also exacerbate climate change. A more sustainable and, possibly, more romantic approach is to go with flowers certified by outfits like Very Flora, or even better, whatever flowers are in season locally. Of course, that's not much help for those of us in wintry climes. Maybe try writing a poem. Let's see. Roses are red, violets are blue. Jack Nicholson, playing the crazed caretaker in The Shining, makes me reach for a blanket. Now a study finds that people we find, well, creepy can actually make us feel colder. The research will be published in the journal Psychological Science. Researchers interviewed 40 college undergraduates. During each interaction, the experimenter was either chummy with the student or very stiff and professional. The investigator also alternated between mimicking students' posture, a signal of rapport, and not doing anything at all. Participants then completed a questionnaire designed to find out how hot or cold they felt. The results showed that the subjects actually felt colder when the investigator acted inappropriately or sent mixed signals. The researchers conjecture that because the brain tries to interpret social cues and purely physical ones simultaneously, people unconsciously associate icy stares and chilly interactions with actual physical coldness. So the next time you have to visit your doctor with the creepy receptionist, bring a sweater. You might picture Neanderthals as cavemen gnawing on bones around a campfire. Which wouldn't be inaccurate, but Neanderthals may have also dined on roasted vegetables and known a bit about medicinal plants too. So says a study in the journal Naturwissenschaften, The Science of Nature. Researchers analyzed hardened dental plaque from 5 Neanderthals found in El Sidrón cave, in northern Spain. Yes, 50,000-year-old dental plaque. And they found a lot lurking between the teeth. Like evidence of nuts, grasses and green veggies, chemical traces of wood smoke, and tiny, intact starch granules, proof Neanderthals ate their carbs. And in one individual, they detected compounds found in the medicinal herbs chamomile and yarrow. The herbs have no nutritional value, and since Neanderthals did have the gene to detect the herb's bitter taste, The researchers speculate that the cave dwellers were munching on them not as food, but to self-medicate. Not too far-fetched, they say, because primates like chimps also use medicinal plants. Luckily for the scientists doing this detective work, Neanderthals may have known a thing or two about medicine, but they didn't get regular checkups at the dentist. Signs that secure borrowing remains robust and firm data on manufacturing and retail sales, released on Thursday, painted the picture of an economy that has yet to be cooled by the recent state's spate of interest rate rises. A lot of people just don't feel quite human without that morning cup of coffee. Now a study finds that the enhanced sense of well-being that caffeine can cause is reflected in our perception of words. Specifically, caffeine increases the ability to recognize words associated with positive thoughts, but doesn't provide the same boost for words with negative or even neutral associations. The research is in the journal PLOS One. Scientists assigned 66 subjects to one of two groups. Half got a 200 mg caffeine tablet, a dose equal to almost 3 cups of coffee. The other half received a sugar tablet. 30 minutes later, the volunteers were shown strings of letters, and had to decide as fast as they could if a string formed a word or was just gibberish. The volunteers recognized words with positive associations much faster than either negative or neutral words. Other studies have shown that positive words tend to be recognized more quickly, but the caffeine increases the gap. So next time you wake up with a grumpy sweetheart, your compliments might be appreciated more if they have a cup of coffee first.
There are some 250 million cars in America, 250 million cars in a country with just over 300 million people. And most of those vehicles, of course, are gas-powered. This poses a huge challenge given the limited supplies of oil and the growing urgency of the global warming crisis. But there's good news, according to our guests today, and that is we have the know-how and the technology to build sleek, fast automobiles that don't use gasoline. These vehicles of tomorrow are powered by hydrogen, electricity, biofuels, and digital technology, and they already exist. So what's stopping us from putting them on the roads? Our guest today will help answer that.
A new process for 3D printing things could pave the way for lighter, faster aircraft that potentially fly further on the same amount of fuel. Today's aeroplanes are held together with thousands of metal rivets and fasteners. That's because the lightweight but strong aluminium alloys used for their frames are considered unweldable. Try to weld them and you get a phenomenon called hot cracking, in which the finished alloy weakens and fractures as it cools. This and other adverse welding effects also stand in the way of 3D printing high-strength aluminium alloy parts. When researchers have tried, the resulting laser-fused mass flakes away at the welding area like a stale biscuit. You've heard about SARS, AIDS and bird flu. Now researchers from Australia claim we're about to be hit by a new epidemic, motivational deficiency disorder. According to the British Medical Journal, 1 in 5 people are said to suffer from motivational deficiency disorder, or MODD, and most don't even know they have it. Symptoms include being unable to get out of bed in the morning, being trapped on the couch. Dogs are not just man's best friend. Previous studies have shown that kids with dogs are less likely to develop asthma. Now a new study may show how, if results from mice apply to us. The work was presented at a meeting of the American Society for Microbiology. The study tests what's called the hygiene hypothesis. The idea is that extreme cleanliness may actually promote disease later on. Researchers collected dust from homes that had a dog. They fed that house dust to mice. They then infected the mice with a common childhood infection called respiratory syncytial virus, or RSV. Dave Hackenberg, a beekeeper since 1962, can usually tell what killed his bees just by looking at them. If they're lying on the ground in front of a hive, it's probably pesticides, he says. If the bees are deformed and wingless, it's probably vampire mites. But last fall, Hackenberg saw something he had never seen before. Thousands of his bee colonies simply disappeared. He was in Florida at the time, pulling the lids off some of his commercial hives. To his horror, they were all empty. The first section of the book covers new modes of assessment. In Chapter 1, Kim Bell, Goldsmith College, London, responds to criticisms of design programs as formalistic and conventional, stating that a focus on risk-taking rather than hard work in design innovation is equally problematic. His research contains 3 parts that include preliminary exploration of design innovation qualities, investigation of resulting classroom practices, and development of evidence-based assessment. The assessment he describes is presented in the form of a structured worksheet, which includes a collaborative element and digital photographs in story format. Such a device encourages stimulating ideas, but does not recognize students as design innovators. The assessment sheet includes holistic impressions as well as details about having, growing, and proving ideas. Colloquial judgments are evident in terms such as wow and yawn, and reward the quality and quantity of ideas with the term sparkiness, which fittingly is a pun as the model project was to design light bulb packaging. In addition, the assessment focuses on the process of optimizing or complexity control as well as proving ideas with thoughtful criticism and not just generation of novel ideas. The definitions for qualities such as technical and aesthetic, pertaining to users, are too narrow and ill-defined. The author provides examples of the project, its features and structures, students' notes and judgments, and their sketches and photographs of finished light bulb packages, in the appendix. All around the world, significant parts of our cultural heritage are threatened by pollution, neglect, carelessness and greed. In learning the importance of our history, we come to understand the need to protect significant remains from the past so that future generations can come to understand their heritage. Every year, about 10 million tons of paper winds up in American landfills and incinerators, which is not only wasteful but adds CO2 to the atmosphere. Recycling helps, but even that material has to be repulped and paperized before you can use it to print out that recipe you'll never make. But what if you could wipe the page clean and use it again? Light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation to the rescue. A new study shows that laser light can erase the toner from a piece of printed paper. The approach appears in the Proceedings of the Royal Society A. Taking a page from the Art Restoration Handbook, scientists sampled a variety of light sources to see if any could be used to strip the ink from laser-printed documents without damaging or discoloring the paper. UV and infrared were too harsh. But a bright green laser applied in 4 nanosecond pulses vaporize STHE print, leaving paper that looks as good as new. Such imprinters will probably run about $30,000, so they probably will not catch on for home use. But people in the recycling world might find that the green laser fits the bill for making paper that's really green. Well, I'm absolutely delighted first of all to have been appointed to this professorship. The role is going to be about public engagement in science, it is about marketing science accessible to as wide an audience as possible, it's about making it easier for our academics here at the University of Birmingham to talk about their research to the general public, and it's not just about a one-way flow of information, it very much is about dialogue. Dams are huge man-made structures that act as barriers on a river. Today, the main reason people build dams is to produce electricity. They are also built to restrict and control the flow of water in a river. Throughout history, dams have been used to prevent flooding and to irrigate farmland. Dams supply about a sixth of the world's electricity, and they significantly reduce the risk of floods and droughts. They also make water easier to access, especially in desert-like areas, where water is in low supply. There are, however, some negative effects of damming rivers. Many people's homes are knocked down to make space for the dam, and flooding can occur in the reservoir, which is the area behind the dam where water collects. This can cause valuable farmland to become submerged under the lakes. Another way in which the industry exerts pressure on doctors is by offering us a variety of professional services. In one of these services, widely advertised to GPs, a company representative shows the practice manager how to use a company disk to trawl through the practice database, identifying patients with problems which might be treatable with the company's products. When that has been done, a company-sponsored nurse interviews the selected patients and draws up a management plan for the GP which, if approved by the doctor, attracts a Medicare item number. One of these companies proudly announces that over 65,000 patients were assessed in this way in 2005. What, one may ask, is a pharmaceutical company doing assessing patients? It is surprising that no government or professional body has stepped in to prevent this commercially sponsored program. The word hormone is derived from a Greek verb that means to excite. Hormones are found in all multicellular organisms and function to coordinate the parts of the organism. A hormone is a chemical signal. It is produced by one part of the body and is then transported to other parts of the body where it triggers responses in cells and tissues. The concept of chemical messengers in plants first emerged from a series of classic experiments on how plant stands respond to light. Think about this, a houseplant on the windowsill grows toward light. If you rotate the plant, it will soon reorient its growth until its leaves again face the window. The growth of a plant toward light is called phototropism. In a forest or other natural ecosystem where plants may be crowded, my current research at the moment is really quite broad. I work at the interface between the arts and humanities, particularly archaeology, but trying to find questions which are difficult to answer unless you start integrating computing and visualization. So really I work in this boundary between trying to understand cultural questions about the past, but those sorts of questions that you can't address unless you start reconstructing, start modeling and visualizing past landscapes, objects and movement of people. The New South Wales government has apologised for yesterday's transport chaos in and around Sydney Harbour during the visit of the Queen Mary II and the Queen Elizabeth II. Roads were lammed, traffic ground to a halt while tram and ferry services were swamped with thousands of additional passengers, with most services delayed for hours. Premier Maurice Humer says that plans were put in place to deal with the congestion, but the number of visitors well exceeded expectations. On the harbour itself there seemed to be as much congestion as there was on the roads, but everyone agreed it was an amazing spectacle. Doctors know a lot about prescribing medications. Take 2 brisk walks and call me in the morning. But for many patients, a light get-moving plan might be just what the doctor should have ordered. Many of us aren't exactly in peak physical condition. But a large number of people are actually deconditioned. So says the Mayo Clinic's Michael Joyner in an essay in the Journal of Physiology. After surgery, illness, pregnancy or extended inactivity for any reason, people might feel faint or fatigued when they try even mild exercise. These signs, Joyner argues, should be recognized by doctors not as symptoms that should be treated with drugs, but rather as a medical state of deconditioning that might be better helped with a gentle, guided exercise program. It might sound counterintuitive that fatigue can be beat back with exercise. But remember Newton, Isaac, not Fig. A body at rest stays at rest. And a body in motion needs to resist external forces acting upon it that might slow it down. Obviously, this is all relevant to your final assignment. So we're going to talk about it. So until today, we've gone through face-to-face interviews as the main sort of part of interviewing the window. Today we're going to have a look at going to use an email and why they work, why they don't necessarily work, and what are the challenges and some of the things that we need to be understanding, when we are completing such interpreters. So let's start with the foreign one. Obviously, there are a few benefits to them, and they are listed there up on that slide. It's obviously less stressful for those of you who might be a little bit anxious about interviewing. Some interesting facts about the great reptilian fossils recently discovered in Wyoming and Colorado have come to light. The bones found represent reptiles of many sizes, from that of a cat up to 160 feet high. The latter, found at Como, Wyoming, belonged to the crocodile order, but the remains give evidence that the animal stood up on its hind legs, like a kangaroo. Another found in Colorado is estimated to have been 100 feet long. A great many remains of the same general class, but belonging to different species, have been collected and sent east. Among them from 300 to 400 specimens of the dinosaur, and about 1,000 pterodactyls, have been shipped from Colorado, Wyoming, and Kansas. The wings of one of the latter were from 30 to 40 feet from tip to tip. 17 different species of these flying dragons have been found in the chalk of western Kansas. There have also been found 6 species of toothed birds. Comparatively little has been done toward classifying the late finds, and the task is such an enormous one. Great importance is attached to them, however, since nothing of the kind had been found in America until a little over a year ago and great stress had been laid by certain geologists on their absence. Another remarkable feature of the discovery was that the fossils which had been reported as not existing in this country had hardly been brought to light in one locality before thousands of tons of them were simultaneously discovered in half a dozen different places. And one particular crop, almond in the US and now in Australia, is transforming the world of beekeeping and bees. What has happened is that something serendipitous came along that people found out, that doctors found out that almonds are good for you, a confection but it's good for you. The Almond Board got a very aggressive promotion going on for almonds. They actually, I just heard recently, send out sales reps to cardiologists at hospitals to promote the heart benefits of almonds. In a very good promotion of almonds, and it's legitimate promotion because they are a healthy food. Sweet potatoes contain fiber, vitamin A and calcium. But the way that scientists think they can make them even more healthful is literally shocking. Researchers found that giving a jolt of electricity to sweet potatoes increased the level of antioxidants known as polyphenols by 60%. The investigators placed sweet potatoes in a solution of sodium chloride. They found that 0.2 amps of direct current gave the potatoes nearly 1.5 times more antioxidants than potatoes that weren't shocked. The research was presented at the National Meeting of the American Chemical Society. It seems that the electric zap stressed the potatoes into producing more polyphenols as a protective mechanism. And the treatment did not sacrifice flavor. Previous research has shown that electrically supercharging white potatoes increases antioxidant levels. So perhaps it's only a matter of time before other fruits and vegetables get shock-counted therapy to restart. Well, the simple explanation might be that yesterday's sudden drop in share prices pretty much across the board has created what market analysts like to call a buying opportunity. It tends to bring out investors to pick through the ruins, looking for bargains. Decision by investors that sellers got a little carried away with things, so the buyers have lifted all the major indexes today. The Dow, the Nasdaq, the S&P 500 were all up around 0.5% in early trading today, and that wasn't a big surprise. The sell-off continued somewhat. Overseas European markets remain fairly weak, along with many of the Asian markets. But you'll remember that all this started with a big plunge of around 9% on the stock market in Shanghai. Well, Chinese rebounded by around 4%. Is that person really glad to see me? Or are they just being polite? Some people struggle to distinguish a fake grin from a truly happy smile. And computers have found this task even more difficult, that is, until researchers develop a program to detect when a smile is genuine. Visual computing researchers at the University of Bradford in the UK started with software for simulating a changing facial expression. This program can examine a video clip of a human head and identify specific details around the eyes, cheeks and mouth. Then the program tracks the details moving relative to each other as the face smiles. Next, the scientists had their program analyzing two sets of video clips. In one, subjects performed posed smiles. This year marks the 400th anniversary of the first permanent English settlement in America. A group of Englishmen, including John Smith, who later was befriended by Pocahontas, built a fort at Jamestown, Virginia in 1607, 13 years before the Pilgrims crossed the Atlantic on the Mayflower. And for the past 14 years, Bill Kelso has been working to uncover the secrets of Jamestown.